Middle-earth Shadow of War. This article assumes you've played Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and will have unmarked spoilers from that game. The same goes to the story DLC in their folders, that it may include unmarked spoilers from the main game. The world of men is ending. In the fires of Mount Doom, a ranger and a wraith, bound together in death, created the one thing that could challenge Sauron, a ring of power. But power can bind those who seek it. The great deceiver has returned to Middle-earth to rebuild his armies, to rule all. The corruption will be contained no longer. The war for Mordor begins. Middle-earth Shadow of War is a wide-open sandbox action RPG and sequel to the 2014's Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. Like the previous game, Shadow of War is developed by Monolith Productions and set in J.R.R. Tolkien's world of Middle-earth. It is an officially licensed game of the Lord of the Rings film trilogy franchise. The time has come for a new ring. Taking place in an alternate timeline version of the events leading up to the Lord of the Rings, the game continues to follow the fallen Ranger Talion and the wraith of Celebrimbor, the elf lord who once helped to forge the One Ring. Picking up where the Shadow of Mordor ended, the duo forged their own Ring of Power and attempt to defeat the menace of the Dark Lord Sauron, even if it means they must become evil overlords themselves in the process. The Nemesis system from the previous game returns, where procedurally generated enemy commanders have running character histories and abilities that develop as you continue to interact with them. Their superiors and or their underlings. The game expands on this system in numerous ways. For example, followers' loyalty is no longer absolute, but rather is determined by various factors such as your actions or inactions and their own ambition. Also, you can shun followers out of your army or mind rape enemies into insanity. Another key addition to the game is your fortress assaults, where you lead your troops in an attempt to conquer the local fort, defeat its overlord, and seize control of the region. This game was released on October 10th, 2017. In Middle-earth Shadow of War, players can actually do this to their enemies, with the use of their shaming ability, which makes the orcs drop in level, and if used enough times will make them permanently deranged. When used against Bruise the Chopper in the story mode, he becomes a sobbing wreck that repeats his madness mantra endlessly. While other orcs are capable of saying a few broken words between screaming and snarling. The trope name comes from this show specifically. One day. Oh, scrolled too far. They scrolled too far. There are apparently a lot of tropes. Abnormal ammo, fiery and poisoned siege beasts, throw big rocks infused with poison flames, cursed siege beasts, fire, Morgai, flyness. Absurdly high level cap. When the game launched, Talion's level cap was 60 and enemy orcs could go up to 65, which was reasonable enough, although not without its own quirks. See empty levels below for that. A normal playthrough usually lands the player somewhere between 30 to 40. A patch raised the caps to 80 and 85 respectively, and lets the player level up even further to level up certain passive buffs. The game is still noticeably designed around the initial cap, as there are no new skills or gear changes beyond level 60, beyond the aforementioned passive upgrades. Absurdly sharp blade, Talion's swords and daggers are able to easily puncture and slash through solid armor and saw through metal shackles. What is the maximum level? Something really, really high. I was hoping by the time anyone reaches that point, they would have decided that they've sufficiently beaten the game. In mini-games, with character levels, you probably won't need to reach the highest level possible in order to beat the game. We could read this forever. But I also don't want to make a super, super long video. I can't read the entire website. At least not in one video. Acoustic license. The overlord of a fort will give a rousing speech to his forces in an attempt to intimidate your army when it begin a conquest, but judging by how the overlord has delivered said speech from the fort's inner keep without any kind of implications, I wonder how Talion is. And assault leaders can even hear it. I mean, they're built for good acoustics. Action film, quiet drama scene. Many of the Gondorian artifacts wind up serving this narrative role, as Talion and Celebrimbor often share a brief moment to talk about their respective cultures, values, and even hobbies upon finding them. Of particular note are Talion's mentions of having always wanted to learn how to play the lute or study carpentry. Action girls, several in fact, compared to Mordor's one. The great spider Shelob is capable of transforming into a human woman at will. In this continuity, and aside from easily capturing Celebrimbor and effortlessly torturing him in the prologue, she's capable of fighting toe-to-toe with almost all of the Nazgul at the same time, when in her giant spider form and armed with the new ring. One of the first characters you meet is Idril, a female Gondorian captain who participates in Minas Ithil's defense against Sauron's forces. You know what? I feel like the biggest thing to say like there aren't actual shapeshifters is if there were people that could really shapeshift, why are there no people walking around looking like anime characters or cat girls at Walmart? Eltariel, a blade of Galadriel, and is an elven hunter assassin who was dispatched to Mordor for the purpose of defeating the Nazgul. She implies that she's been at it for years. She's even skilled enough to bring down Talion when necessary. Last but probably most imposing is Karnan, a female thing. Nature entity is the most charitable description, who is capable of controlling Mordor's wildlife. She can also transform into various native beasts at will. Actionized sequel. There is even more hardcore action. The Nemesis system is expanded upon, and there are even more places to explore. Adaptational attractiveness. Minos Morgul in the films is obviously evil lair on the side of a cliff, where here it looks like people actually could have lived in it before it was taken over by the Witch King. Even after it's captured, it resembles a ghost town more than anything. In the source material, Shelob is a giant spider. In the game, she is capable of transforming into a sexy lady. On top of that, her spider form is much sleeker than in the films, appearing to be based on some kind of orb weather rather than a tarantula. Adaptational deviation. The fall of Minas Ithil canonically happened around a millennium before the War of the Ring. Here it happens only decades before. Adaptive ability. Many higher-ranking captains will be able to adapt to a tactic if a player uses it against them several times. Some even have a trait that allows them to adapt to them faster. Advertised extra. The Balrog, Tal-Garoth, is heavily featured in the promotional material and is even on the game's box art, seemingly indicating that he would act as a major antagonist. He is actually a secondary antagonist, featured in only 2 missions, and is disposed of very early in the questline he is involved, whereas the orc necromancer Zog takes the primary spot. The Agonizer, an orc voiced by Kumail Nanj, got his own trailer, but he follows the exact same rules as every other orc, appears at random, and it's possible to permanently kill him during your first few hours. It's also possible for the player to never meet him. A God Am I. The Riddler. 2 characters either start with or slowly develop a god complex over their questline. Zog the Eternal. Whether because he was always thought so or just hid it carefully, or creating his new ring convinced him it was possible, Celebrimbor gradually replaces his royal we terms with the personal pronouns mine instead of ours, for example, and eventually starts believing he can enslave Sauron. However, the fact that he almost succeeds on the latter means he really was powerful enough to do it if fates had a line. It was because she could foresee the precise future that Shelob strove to alienate Talion from his elven partner to the point that Celebrimbor felt the need to betray him and take on Etaliel, which ultimately doomed his insurrection and got him turned in the Flaming Eye when Sauron absorbed him. A lighter shade of black. While Talion wants to defeat Sauron to protect Middle-earth and has clear lines he doesn't want to cross, Celebrimbor only cares about amassing power and conquering Mordor. Celebrimbor later reveals his ultimate goal was to dominate Sauron and use his armies to conquer the whole of Middle-earth, making him no better than Sauron. Alien blood. As with the previous game, orcs have black blood. So does Chronogorgon. All trolls are different. We'll resume this if anybody wants me to. I still say it would be interesting if there was a modding community for Shadow of War. Heck. Imagine if you had AI procedurally generate new orcs based on anything from the internet. Or imagine if somebody was streaming this game and they were live streaming and chat could pay money to super chat to have an AI make the orcs say whatever they super chat. But I imagine at that point you'd have so many times where the orc would just show up saying so many slurs. I still think it'd be interesting. Imagine if you had the Nemesis system in other types of games, or even just a straight up huge ass mod of Shadow Mordor. So instead of the middle of Volcano Land, it's, the middle of Tokyo or a forest with cherry blossom trees. And Instead of orcs, it's sexy anime girls. And it's actually got sexy anime girl voices, or just any anime character you can think of that you want. And they're talking and saying stuff that's in character. At the same time, you could change mechanics, like especially if you have anime girls like Senran and Kagura. You could have... Tsundere Kagura is a series of fan service-filled beat-em-up games produced by Marvelous Entertainment and developed by Tamsoft. The premise involves different schools of ninja, commonly referred to as shinobi in the series, generally split into two factions. You get the point. But like imagine like a Senran Kagura game, like Shadow of War, with the Nemesis system. And AI can just procedurally generate new anime characters. I even just pull random characters that actually do exist. Like all of a sudden you just walk. And of course, we could just like, depending on if you don't care about using real likenesses, you'd be like walking along and like, it's like O.J. Simpson, the orc. It's like, what? Arnold Schwarzenegger, the orc. Bill Cosby, the orc. Why is it hard to Markiplier, the orc? Just because I've recently trying to think like Mickey Mouse, the orc. But not even an orc. It's just like, it's not like they're orcs. It's just straight up Mickey Mouse. Just like, or like Bob Saget. It's like, it's not even like orc talking like Bob's. It literally is just an AI recreation of Bob Saget. I don't know. Does anyone else like America's Funniest Home Videos, or is no one remember that? I don't know. I mean, imagine if people could just like mod in any character, even a real life character from, you know, all of a sudden you're like, is that Mel Gibson? It's like, what? I don't know. But I still think like if you made the Senran Kagura version of it, you'd either have it like the beat 'em up style that they have there, where they're just the clothes get ripped, but no actual gore. Or you could take out the violence entirely, and instead of like executing them, you're giving them hugs and head pats. And instead of, shooting arrows at people, you're throwing stuffed animals at them. You're like just throwing, here's a blahaj, here's a teddy bear. Or instead of a stealth kill, it's just you sneaking up and showing them their favorite manga. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how the whole domination or betrayal or mind-breaking stuff would work in this reimagining of this. And then, of course, there's those people that do the ruined by mods thing. Like they've done like GTA and stuff like that, where it's just an absurd level of chaotic mods that don't make any sense or work together. Heck, the main reason I quit playing any Shadow of War I actually had issues on both my PlayStation and on the computer. On the computer, I didn't do much just because it was just a PowerPoint presentation of Italian stabbing orcs while me cussing. And even then, it was like, granted, it was pretty bad in the recording for you guys, but even what I was seeing, it was just like, I was playing the game at 2 frames per second. So it was very difficult for me to see what was happening myself. And as is, my computer really can't handle a game like that. It tends to want to overheat anyway, even though I have an external fan plugged into it. So I don't think it's physically possible for my computer to play a game like that ever again. But I feel like an interesting thing I'd want to do. Now, granted, if the mods existed for the game, that'd be cool. But again, my computer can't even handle the base shit with that. Heck, even my disc that I play on my PlayStation for Shadow War doesn't really seem to work anymore. Like, it'll play, it's just like the main thing, like it won't. The only sound effects I can hear is just like a little bit of environmental stuff. So it's like a lot of the sound isn't even working and I can't adjust it. And it's like, there's things that just aren't loading correctly. I mean, granted, it's an old disc and I got a lot of use out of it, I guess, but still. It's kind of sucks. It's gotten to the point of being like, but I mean, I played it a lot in the past. I'm just saying this. I think it would be interesting even if there was no mods available and if my computer could handle it. It'd be interesting to play Shadow of War, but maybe go into the game files and just randomly delete something, or if I could find something that has to do with physics, because I find it very interesting. I've watched other people do streams of it where they'll see stuff happens where physics breaks, and I'm like, if I knew what parts of the code affect the physics, couldn't I just go into the game code and just like delete a zero here and there? Like, couldn't I just, it not necessarily mod anything, but just change the code to where something either, one, if I know what's going on, I can maybe like, hey, if I change this value, maybe everyone can move at triple speed. Or if I change this value, it changes something about how the orcs spawn or something. In the same regard, imagine if I could create some sort of weird random visual or audio glitch that's completely impossible to occur otherwise. Basically, gradually corrupting the game to make things exist that shouldn't exist. Which I feel like we would go less in the direction of, ooh, look, that's a funny bounce, and that flag is spinning a lot, and that guy went flying really far after I hit him off the side of a tower, and it's going to be more like, oh, that orc skin is inside out. That orc is 7 orcs. That orc is just a drake forced into a bipedal form. That orc has a bunch of textures that shouldn't exist, and he's randomly glitching like the fucking Matrix. That orc's becomes completely translucent. And it's less of like, oh, a mod's like, oh, we're going to change the orcs to look like the Arbiter from Halo. And it's more like, that Olog is now Astolfo. Like, how does that make sense? It's going to be less of, silly mods like that and more like, you have added a 0 somewhere it shouldn't exist in the code. Now this building is made out of Beedrill from Pokemon. All sewn together. It's like you have somehow randomly created fucking Pyramid Head. But I know I can't describe it in a way that does it justice. But I'm saying, like, you ever play Sonic or something like that, and it, like, you start having sort of a glitch here and there that's sort of like something's occurring that's like, you don't know what's happening. You feel a profound amount of confusion, but more than that, there are things, something about it's just generally unsettling. Like maybe you just go to an area and the lighting just doesn't work right anymore. Or maybe parts of the floor just don't load. Or maybe you're in the forest area and all of a sudden the sky is just a reverse image of the snowland. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I'm caught between right now imagining just the various kinds of glitches that could occur that would actually generally startle and scare the player, because you'd have no way of knowing when they're going to happen. I'm torn between thinking about that and imagining all of these characters in front of me naked. You guys get the point. Bye.